Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my new sewing space. You get a little sneak peek of the new space in the video today, but I will be doing a future video where I give you guys a full tour. But basically, if you haven't been watching my channel, I moved house, and so now instead of being in my living room, I actually have an entire room to do sewing and crafting and everything, and I'm really excited about that. Today I am going to be making this little baby bonnet. Well, I'm making two. I've had two friends who had babies recently. They both had little girls, and they're really close friends of mine from childhood, so I wanted to make them something very special. And I had this fabric in my fabric stash left over from another project. I've always thought it was super cute. It's actually Rifle Paper Company fabric, so if the pattern looks familiar, that might be why. And then the pattern that I used for this is an old-fashioned baby bonnet pattern that my mom gifted me. So I also did decide to customize it because the pattern has like these kind of very small, more traditional little embroideries on it, and I decided to create my own embroidery pattern in a style that sort of mimicked the rest of the fabric for the bonnet. And I used embroidery thread that I had left over from other projects for that as well. So everything that I used to make these bonnets was from my stash and left over, which I think little bonnets like this are a really good stash buster project because they don't take that much fabric. And I was really excited to kind of be both economical and environmentally friendly, and also make something that I'm really proud of and really excited to send to these two special friends in my life. So let's get started. I'm using a pattern that my mom gave to me called Old Fashioned Baby Bonnets by Jeannie Baumeister. This pattern contains several different versions of baby bonnets, and I chose the one that has the little scalloped edge on it. So the first step is to take my pattern pieces and cut my fabric out. I chose to do the little scalloped brim in a contrasting white fabric, so I cut that out and then used it to cut out interfacing to go inside as well. I created my own embroidery design to go on this white brim, so I just traced my design that I had drawn in pen in some washable ink that will rinse out when I get the fabric wet. Then I got my embroidery floss out and got to work. The scalloped hood needs a lining, so I laid right sides together and stitched along the edge, leaving the long, straight edge unstitched. Then I trimmed the seam allowance down as much as possible to reduce bulk. Then I turned everything right side out, and to help me get a nice clean crisp edge there, I used a metal chopstick that I keep for this purpose. I find it works really well. Next, the main bonnet gets sewn up along its shortest side. When worn, this seam will run from the nape of the neck up to the crown of the head. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing for our bonnet lining. When ironing these seams, I ironed both seam allowances over to one side, making sure to alternate which direction I ironed them in for the lining and the outer fabric. Then we run some gathering stitches around the circle at the crown of the head. There's a circular piece of fabric that gets set in here, and to make sure that our gathers are sitting evenly all the way around the circle, we mark the notches. After getting our gathers arranged around that circle, I went ahead and stitched it in by hand. So now when I go to machine sew it, I don't have to deal with all those pins sticking out. Then I sewed the brim on with the wrong side of the brim facing the right side of the bonnet. To keep the brim folded over the right way, I top stitched the bonnet to the seam allowance from the attachment point, and this is going to keep that bonnet brim folded over nicely. This bonnet has a little chin strap, and I wanted a way to attach it that would be adjustable as the babies aged and grew. So I'm using a hook, but instead of having an eye that I attached to the other edge, I used some embroidery floss and created these little loops going up along the underside of the bonnet brim there. The chin strap is just a simple rectangular piece of fabric folded over on itself and then stitched up two sides. After ironing nice and flat, that got top stitched down to the bonnet. Then it was time to attach the lining by placing right sides together and stitching along the base of the neck. To keep the lining from showing on the outside of the bonnet, I also top stitched the seam allowance down to the lining. The last remaining edge of the lining gets folded back to the inside and pinned. Then I just whip stitched it in place by hand. And finally, the hook is sewn on to the chin strap.